You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Mike.
And I'm Justin.
And this is episode 84, Yakuza Games with Alex from a VGM Journey.
Hello, Alex.
Hey, guys.
What's going on, brother?
Not a whole lot, just guesting on your guys' fine show.
We are happy to have you, man.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming. We're glad we could have you on for this. And this episode is specially tooled by Alex in the sense that Justin and I are completely blind to the Yakuza games. And after that intro track, we probably shouldn't be anymore. So I went into this episode totally blind to not only the franchise, but the franchise's music outside of a few remixes from Project X Zone 2, which some of the feat characters from Yakuza are featured in. Just to hear anything from this, especially after picking my tracks, I know this is going to be a phenomenal episode, both in terms of quality and content and guests, but also specifically the music and diving deep into a franchise that neither of us have any experience with. So this came to us from Alex. Alex was like, we were like, hey, we want to do a show with you. What do you think would be a good idea? And he said, Yakuza games. And I said, I know nothing about them. Deal. Pizza. Let's do it.
Yes.
Alex, tell our listeners a little bit about your show and who you are and a little bit about what you do on a VGM Journey.
I host this little VGM podcast called a VGM Journey. I guess I could best describe it as a bite-sized kind of show where they're only about 20 to 30 minutes long, and I just play a few different VGM tracks. It's either stuff that I've been listening to, or I play a lot of listener requests. And it's a pretty casual kind of time. I mean, I don't really delve too much into the music. I just let them play and let the tracks speak for themselves.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about your show is that bite-sized is the perfect word for the experience that you deliver, because you're not like us boring, long-winded people who just go on and on about composers and experiences and all that nonsense. You're just like, yo, what's up? I'm Alex. Here's a track. This is cool. Here's, you may share a little bit like here and there, but like for the most part, you're sticking pretty firm on hosting a show with very minimal host interaction, unless you have a guest on. In which case, then you're talking a little bit to the guest. So it's cool to hear your podcast because you always pick really top-notch music. It's nice to hear a podcast be nice and short and sweet like that. Especially for those of us who just don't have the time to listen to podcasts. So when I do listen to podcasts, like for VGM, because it's no secret, like I just don't have the time to listen to everybody's podcasts, unfortunately. But I would say a VGM Journey is probably the podcast I listen to the most out of all of them because I see the time. That and VG Embassy, which my ex-co-host Ed, does. So I like to kind of peek in and be like, oh, what's he covering today? So it's kind of the same thing with a VGM Journey. I like to look at it and be like, hey, this is nice and short. I can listen to it, while I'm working on something and really dive into it.
Yeah, I think I like to describe it as the friends with benefits of VGM podcasting, where you don't have to be totally committed with it.
Okay. Nice.
Nice. Yeah, I remember one time we were on Rhythm and Pixels, and I think Rob said it really well. Like, every VGM podcast that's out here does something a little bit different, and that's what makes each of them, like, cool. Like, there isn't a VGM podcast that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, we delve kind of deep into, like, composers and what else they've done. Ed kind of just delves deep into whatever topic he's doing. Like, it's not necessarily about the composers, it's about like the game or the series.
Right.
Rob and Purnell are just like two buddies chatting about video games and everything else.
Yeah.
And then like a VGM Journey, you've just got these, like you said, bite-sized, these quick hits of really good music. And it doesn't need to be long-winded. It doesn't need to be a deep dive. It just needs to be good music and good conversation. So
absolutely.
I don't know where I was going with that, other than like, I think you're doing a really great job.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, that means a lot to me, just hearing that you guys have been really enjoying the show, and hopefully especially your listeners. I mean, I'm sure that we have a handful of mutual listeners that listen to both shows.
Sure.
I'm really glad that they're liking it too.
Yeah, I'm sure there's bound to be some crossover fans. So for those of you who are crossing over from a VGM journey, welcome. We're two guys who don't shut up about video game music. Speaking of which, our intro track, which was picked by Alex, was from Yakuza 3, which came out on the PlayStation 3 in 2009. That track was called Fly, and it is Fly.
Oh, very
It's a great
fly.
track. It was by Hideki Sakamoto, Hiroyoshi Kato, and Keisuke Ito. It was so good. My favorite part, which you guys are not going to be surprised by this for longtime listeners, but when the guitar came in and then it had the double harmonies, like the harmonized guitars with the slightly higher octave.
Oh, yeah.
Butter. So good. Melts in my ears.
It's like, speaking of butter, that's
I
your bread and butter.
100% agree with you on that. I think that is the best part of that song.
I like that this track changes like throughout the entire time. I did not get bored listening to this song at all. I mean, initially you got like kind of a DDR, kind of bang, 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 you know, kind of like more like crunchy
Techno?
kind of rhythm section.
Oh, like up front, yeah. That's one of the things that I mentioned or wanted to mention. Like, I really liked I thought the opening was really cool. It made me feel like, like this is almost like an anime opener, except a lot longer. And then about a minute 15, these synths come in, and it gets a little bit techno-y, and I was really digging that. And then like the guitar melody comes in, and like you said, it changes a number of times, but like the guitar comes in and changes it and gives me kind of this sense of like journey or wandering. And this was a journey of a track.
Yeah, for sure. I also very much feel that this sounds like something really old school. Like, not only does it change throughout the track, but it also introduces new things throughout it. And, the repetition of the melodies and all the bits of this track, they all just kind of flow together like a old school, like Super Nintendo NES, like title track almost. I'm not sure when this plays in the game. Alex might be able to tell us, but it definitely like got the vibes that like it was a title track.
Yeah, you're both actually are like pretty much right on the money, because this is the intro song for Yakuza 3.
Oh, sweet.
Oh,
Nailed it.
You definitely hit that, right on the money on that.
Perfect. Awesome. So we're going to talk about the composers a little later, and the game too, because we got another Yakuza 3 track coming up. So I figure we'll just jump right into Alex's first track. For those of you who haven't listened to a guest episode before, we go round robin, which means Alex picked 3 tracks in addition to the intro, and I picked 3 and Justin picked 3. So we'll have him go first, then me, and then Justin.
Yep. And then
we'll cycle back
until
over.
We're done. Yep. So, Alex, why don't you introduce your first track here?
I really was thinking, like, I have to play this song on the show. I mean, this was a must play, and this is coming from the original game, Yakuza. That track is called Funk Goes On, and it was composed by Hidenori Shoji.
Cool. And that's from the PS2 release that came out in 2005.
right. That was Funk Goes On from the game Yakuza. Came out for the PS2 in 2005, and it was composed by Hidenori Shoji.
Oh, man. So this was a surprise for a number of reasons.
Okay.
For one, it is a funky track, as the name suggests.
That main riff, you mean?
Yeah, well, so I wasn't expecting that. Normally, when I hear funky tracks, I'm expecting like a funky bass line.
Yeah,
and there was a funky bass line, but it didn't really shine until like a minute or so later on in the track. But the guitars right off the bat were funky, and I was just like, oh, wow, that's not what I was expecting. And then I was hit. Like, it was like they hit me with a right hook and then immediately with a left hook with those horns. I was not expecting horns in this track. And then just to like knock me out completely with a killer uppercut, those vocals were crazy. Like it wasn't like crazy lyrics or anything like off the wall, but they were just like, it was almost like a ska song, actually, now that I think of it. It was the energetic, very active vocals, not really singing, or maybe not as much until the end, but just like the vocalizations that they were thrown in there, it was just making noise, and really got me into this track.
So what you're saying is the track beat you up and took your lunch money?
It did. It absolutely beat me up and took my lunch money.
Okay, all right. Just so we're clear,
but you got beat up. We're friends.
Yeah, you got beat up by a song.
I did.
Justin, how dare you? Anyways, I remember this one actually from Project X Zone 2. This is one of the tracks that they play in the game. So as soon as I heard this just now, I was like, I know this one. I don't get ska at all, actually, from this. You know what I get is like early to mid 2000s breakbeat kind of, or like funk movie soundtrack thing that all those movie soundtracks were doing, like bam 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 bam. What is that from? The Propeller Heads? Yeah. I get like some Propeller Heads vibes mixed in with some funk on this, you know, especially with those drums, those big swooping drums. You know, that is just the music of the times, so to speak. You know, in the early 2000s, there was this real big throwback to 70s music. So there was a lot of like funk-oriented music that was coming out around that time. And so I feel like this track definitely emulates and takes inspiration from that era of music, at least in my eyes.
I can see that.
Yeah. What was the reason for choosing this one over anything else from the first Yakuza?
I think other than it, sounding pretty badass, I just thought it was a pretty important song to play, and that you will hear this song constantly, like as you're playing through the game, because it is the main battle theme.
Okay.
When you're just beating up thugs.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the first Yakuza game. Did you play it back when it came out, or like how did you get into the Yakuza series period? Was this the first game?
Well, to be honest, I've never played the original Yakuza.
Oh, okay.
My experience with the first Yakuza is actually with Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake.
Yes.
Which it shares a lot of the same music, but it's updated and with different instruments. But I did go back and listen to the soundtrack for the first Yakuza and really liked it.
This track in particular, what's your opinion on the Yakuza Kiwami version versus this one? Is it the same type of track, or like what differences are there?
Pretty much like replace all the instruments and have more of an electronic dance sound to it. The version on Kiwami, I think it's pretty good, but I think it pales in comparison to the original. Yeah,
that makes sense actually for them to replace all the instruments with electronic stuff. To like update it. So that makes total sense for them to do that. So Yakuza is the franchise itself is based on the actual Japanese Yakuza, which is the mafia in Japan. This franchise has been going strong since 2005 and ultimately came out here in 2006 in September for this first game. But the story follows a character named Kazuma Kiryu, and he's a member in the Yakuza. He did not commit any crimes, but somehow he ended up in prison for 10 years. So after he gets out, he finds out that there's, I guess, some mafia people that are searching for about 10 billion yen that was stolen from a clan known as the Tojo clan. Ooh. And so he finds somebody who is targeted by that clan whose name is Haruka. And she is supposedly the key to finding their money. So he's got to try to protect her throughout the entire game. The whole thing takes place in Tokyo, but more specifically in Kamurocho, which is kind of like a recreation of Tokyo's Kabukicho district.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an open world game, and it utilizes a lot of RPG elements. It's all, based on fighting for the most part in the game. Seems like it's kind of when it comes to open world, kind of like a Grand Theft Auto.
I was going to say like a GTA Saints Row type of a thing?
Yeah, like GTA, but done by a Japanese developer. So, yeah, kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, I like to describe it as GTA, but instead of, I guess, just driving around shooting people, it's just kind of plays more like a beat 'em up.
Okay. It sounds like it's more story-based, though, than GTA. It stands on its own legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I think that's one of the reasons that I never actually got into Yakuza, is I was just like, oh, it's like it's GTA in Japan.
Yeah.
But the more I'm hearing and the more I'm seeing of it now, I really feel like I botched that one.
I found out about the series from that Project X Zone 2 game, and then shortly thereafter, I found out that there were some Japanese models and Japanese adult actresses that I knew about were in it that were super popular. That I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That they included in that. The only name that stands out to me is Anri Okita. So don't Google her. Just
unless you're over 18.
Unless you're over 18 and get your parents' permission, get your grandparents' permission. So.
Let's get into Mike's first pick here.
Sure. Yeah, I picked a track from Yakuza 5, and this came out on the PS3 in 2012, and it was later released for there was a Yakuza re-released remastered collection that came out on the PS4, so you can get it there. So the track is called Be the Star, and it's by Mitsuharu Fukuyama. Oh man, that was Be the Star from Yakuza 5. That came out on the PlayStation 3 in 2012, and the track is composed by Mitsuharu Fukuyama.
Oh man. So I know you heard something interesting in the opening.
Yeah.
I heard. What they're actually saying, I know, is can you handle it? And I don't say this to make fun of Japanese people speaking English, but sometimes the R and the L sound, they are a weird sound in Japanese. But what I heard in that opening is, can you handbrake?
Okay. I heard, can you hungry? And then right after that, just Brillo.
Just Brillo.
Yeah, that's what I heard. But and again, as Justin said, not meant to offend anyone who speaks Japanese or is Japanese or anything. But like just that, it was hard to hear. Like
at the very beginning, the vocals were a little bit muted to the music, but as it went on, you could hear the vocals a lot better, and I really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
This is another really funky, very 70s
very
track.
70s, especially with that da 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 da.
Yes.
I love that. Oh, such a throwback. It was great. Yeah, this was one of the tracks that I really had difficulty choosing, between, and it was basically, I'm either gonna pick something else from one of the other games, but you guys are covered most of everything else, so I was like, I'm just gonna pick 2 tracks from Yakuza 5.
That's fine.
Yeah, but this one's got great vocals, Japanese vocals. It's a lot of fun. I get some severe Lupin the Third / Cowboy Bebop vibes.
Yeah.
Like big time from both of those franchises. Especially with all the 70s throwback, the vocals. The whole thing just has a very anime vibe, but not like new anime, like classic anime, like Lupin and Cowboy Bebop. So, yeah, good stuff.
Alex, what do you think about this track?
Yeah,
any thoughts?
I think it's definitely a fun one, and to be honest, I was a little surprised that you picked this, Mike.
Oh, really? Just because, or?
Like, I'm listening and I'm like, I don't know if this is like, a Mike kind of track, but...
I love 70s funk.
I don't think we've played a whole lot of it on this show.
Yeah.
So like that's a fair assessment from listening to this show from day one.
Sure.
I wouldn't have pegged this for a Mike track either. The only thing that I would pick out is like, oh, that's totally Mike. Are those stings, like the 70s da 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 da?
Yeah.
Like that as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of a Mike thing.
Well, I love funky bass, and I love 70s porn disco guitars. That's the only explanation I have for what those guitars kind of sound like. I grew up listening to a lot of like 70s music and 80s music, just growing up throughout the 80s. I didn't live through the 70s, obviously. I was born in 83, but like, just driving around the car, like a lot of the stuff that my parents would listen to is like either 70s related, 80s related, or like R&B, like a lot of R&B. So I would listen to almost everything in the car. I didn't really get into hard rock and metal and alternative and stuff like that until I was in middle school. So before that, all the music that I was listening to was either video game music, like in the games, or whatever my parents were playing in CDs on the radio and stuff. A lot of New Jack Swing, R&B, 90s R&B with like groups like TLC and stuff like that. Boys to Men, all that classic stuff.
Gotcha.
So I personally really like this type of music. I just don't seek it out enough. It's more like if it's playing, I'll rock out to it. Like it's good stuff. But I can see like stereotypically if you're looking at what I would pick. Like, it's got to have a harpsichord or an organ, or it's got to be like wheedly wheedly squeedly wheedly, so yeah, I get it. I'm a one-trick pony sometimes.
Yeah, I can't deny that it's a good track.
For sure. It kind of makes me want to play this game just to see where this plays. And I was a little worried, too, picking this track, because I was like, oh, shoot, is this like a vocal arrangement of an already existing track? And like, did I goof? But like, I couldn't find any information on it, and I don't know anything about the franchise, so it was one of those things like, I'm gonna roll the dice and pick this and hope that it's actually in game.
Yeah.
Do you know if this is in the game?
I want to say that all the vocal tracks in the entire series, I want to say they are all original tracks.
Okay.
I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, It could be a licensed piece of music, and I just don't know it.
I hope not.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll find out one way or another.
Yeah.
Have you played 5, Alex?
I have.
Okay.
Actually, I kind of forgot to mention when we were talking about Yakuza 1 that, I've played all the Yakuza games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this all happened in the last year.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Like,
So you just kind of started from, recently and just kind of worked your way through all the Yakuza games?
yeah, totally marathon through them.
That's awesome.
Was that your pandemic thing?
Yeah, a little bit. It was a combination of that and I'm not a PlayStation guy, so I had a Xbox Game Pass, and they kind of dumped all the Yakuza games on that. That's how I was playing them.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I feel like this franchise leans more heavily towards PlayStation, especially since the games initially started coming out on PlayStation.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were on Xbox, actually. I thought they were I thought they were PlayStation exclusives. Maybe they were timed exclusives, or maybe I'm just insane.
I believe that all the re-releases, like the Kiwami games, were
yes.
all like Xbox related. So,
You guys were actually mostly right on that. They were PlayStation exclusives, and they actually, like, just recently, like in the last couple years, come out on Xbox, like all the games.
yeah. Okay. The composer on this one is Mitsuharu Fukuyama. So just to dive quick into them, they started off with Sega Ages 2500 series. That's the remakes of older Sega games on PS2. They did the SDI and Quartet remakes, which I had no idea Quartet was remade onto Sega Ages. So that's dope because I love Quartet. So good. Such a fun game. Then they followed it up with Let's Go Jungle Lost on the Island of Spice in 2006, where they did sound effects. I believe that is that game that I've seen at Fun Spot, where the whole thing is a giant truck, like the arcade cabinet is just a giant truck with a seat, and it's got curtains, and you sit in the truck, and you got like shoot monkeys and like crazy stuff like that, like all kinds of wacky stuff.
Yeah.
After that, they started working on the Yakuza series, starting with the third game, labeled under sound production, and then Yakuza 4, they became a music composer. And they continued to work on the Yakuza franchise up until Binary Domain in 2012, where they were the screen music director. That's a very underrated and awesome game by Sega, so if you haven't played Binary Domain, go check it out. And then they started working with Nintendo and Sega on the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games series. So they did a couple of those. The last one that they did was in 2019 for the Tokyo 2020 games.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yakuza 5 in and of itself, we'll talk a little bit more about when we play another track from it later on. I'm not going to get too deep into the plot of these games. I'll talk a little bit about the gameplay and whatnot, but I want to stray away from just like doing a Wikipedia read, just because I'm completely unfamiliar with all of this. So, we can maybe turn that towards Alex to kind of be our soundboard for stuff like that as far as the plot goes. So,
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of plot.
All right, so Justin, you got a pick coming up. What do you got for us?
I do. So this is going to be going back a game, Yakuza 4. This originally came out in the PS3 in 2010. The track is just called Funny. You'll see why. It is composed by Kenichi Tokoi, Yasuhiro Takagi, Mitsuharu Fukuyama, Ryohei Kono, Chihiro Aoki, Takahiro Kai, and Yuichi Kanatani. All right, welcome back. That was Funny from Yakuza 4, the 2010 PS3 release composed by Kenichi Tokoi, Yasuhiro Takagi, Mitsuharu Fukuyama, Ryohei Kono, Chihiro Aoki, Takahiro Kai, and Yuichi Kanatani.
Okay. Why?
Excuse me? Why? For one, I feel like this is a song that you would love because of all like the wackiness in it, but that's the reason that I picked it. Is I feel like the Yakuza series is a relatively serious kind of game.
True.
I don't think it takes itself too seriously. I'm sure there are a number of like funny moments in it, but like you're talking about the Japanese mafia and I trying not to get killed and protecting people and whatnot.
All that sounds hilarious.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring something a little bit lighthearted, and I came across this and immediately like bust a gut laughing. Just the sound effects that they use, like the honk, the just all of the sound effects were great, and I just like it had me laughing like a madman when I listened to it the first time. I was a little bit more reserved doing this live, so.
I was going to say, can you give us a preview of your madman laugh? Or
I might wake your kids up.
Okay, all right, so don't do it. All right, yeah. What do you think of this one, Alex?
It's definitely over the top, which, to be honest, it's really not all that surprising. I can't really think of where in the game this is played, but I would imagine that this is playing on one of the side quests, which in those games they call them sub-stories. Mm-hmm. Which they tend to be a lot less serious and more over the top.
Okay. I get a mini game vibe.
Oh yeah. I could see that.
Yeah.
This is like maybe you're at like a festival, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like in Japan, they I feel like they regularly have, or at least they're in a lot of animes, these like small town festivals where it's kind of like a carnival. Like there are yearly carnivals for different towns around here where we are. It's kind of the same thing, except like businesses set up little booths and there's like little games.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, this feels like, you're playing like, win a goldfish at a ring toss or something silly at one of those.
Sounds like something you would definitely hear in Ranma Half.
Yeah.
For sure. Very goofy, slapstick, fun. Doesn't take itself too seriously. Very relaxed. The musicianship itself is great. This is definitely one of those tracks that you leave on your phone, and when it comes up, you're just like, whoever's in the car is just like, what? And you're like, gotcha.
Got him. I appreciate the fact that you brought up Ranma Half, because I think that is a much better analog to what I was thinking of where else this could be than what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because in my head, the first thing that came to mind was like the Heathcliff cartoon from the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Like this could totally be like some background music.
Yeah.
But like Ranma Half makes way more sense.
Yeah. If you haven't watched Ranma Half, do it. It's very goofy. It is definitely, there's like some female topless nudity, so just be warned.
There is?
Yeah.
Oh, right. When it was originally done in America, they did the same thing in Tenchi. They put bathing suits on the characters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm watching it on Hulu, and they didn't censor any of the topless content. So,
wow.
Yeah, I was quite a shock because I thought it was a kid's show.
I mean, it is.
It is, but it's TV 14.
Well, in America.
Yeah.
In Japan, they don't have issues with a lot of the nudity stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, we're getting way sidetracked.
Yes. Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about Yakuza 4 and your experience with it?
Yakuza 4, I will say that it was the first game in the series to have multiple playable characters.
Oh.
And they're each pretty different in their own way. Mm-hmm. And I guess, to be honest, I think it was kind of I don't want to say a low point for this series, but I don't think it's definitely like as good as the earlier games or even the games that came out after it.
Okay.
Kazuma Kiryu finds himself once again caught up in events beyond his control. First, a Yakuza from a syndicate allied with the Tojo clan is fatally shot by a member of the clan. Then, a man investigating the murder is stabbed to death. These events spark a full-blown struggle for money, power, and above all, honor, in a story experienced through the eyes of 4 characters, including a loan shark with a heart of gold. I don't understand how you can ever say that. A former Yakuza looking for answers, and a police detective with a knack for bending the rules.
Okay, that's a pretty good summarization. It seems, looking at the plot online for these games, that there's a lot that goes on plot-wise. They're very heavy with the plot. There's a lot of stuff happening. So we'll try our best to work through this franchise to make sure that we're covering, the basics of everything that goes on. But I guess gameplay-wise, it's pretty much the same as the previous games in the franchise, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not too much, I guess changes from game to game. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say cut and paste, but...
Okay.
Yeah, the main elements are there, and they I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, for sure.
If it works,
exactly.
Improvements are always welcome. But if it doesn't need to be improved, if it already works and it's fun, why change it up too much?
Sure. Yeah. Tell me about the composers that we are not covering later on.
Yes. So there are still 5 of them. Kenichi Takoi started out doing music and remixes in Daytona, USA Deluxe in 1996. Space Channel 5,
Nice.
Part 2, and Part 1.
Nice.
Phantasy Star Portable 1 and 2 in 2008 and 2009. Did composition on both of those. And most recently, still active, did composition and remixing on Sonic Colors Ultimate in 2021. Yasuhiro Takagi started out doing sound programming in Sword of Vermilion in 1989. Did a lot of sound effect and voice cast. Just taking a look at the music composition credits here, we have Outrun 2006, Coast to Coast in 2006.
Oh, nice.
And this, Yakuza 4 in 2010. Their most recent credit is as sound director in Shenmue 1 and 2 in 2018.
Oh, that's the re-release.
Really? Yes, exactly. Ryohei Kono started out doing voice editing in Shenmue in 1999, did music composition on Yakuza 4, voice editing in Shenmue 1 and 2, the re-release, and then their last credit is as sound staff in House of the Dead, Scarlet Dawn in 2018. Takahiro Kai is similarly brief. They started out doing guitars in Sega Ages 2500 Volume 30, Galaxy Force 2 Special Extended Edition, and then they went on to do sound production in Yakuza 3, music composition in Yakuza 4, music composition in Yakuza Dead Souls in 2011, and their last credit is sound creator in Initial D Arcade Stage 7 AAX. And then last but not least, we have Yuichi Kanatani. Started out doing sound direction in Rambo in 2008, then did sound production in Yakuza 3, music composition in Yakuza 4, and finally, music composition in Yakuza Dead Souls in 2012.
All right. Let's move into Alex's second pick. What do you got for us this time around?
I wanted to bring Pledge of Demon from Yakuza 0. It came out for both the PS3 and PS4 in 2015, and it was composed by Yuri Fukuda, Chihiro Aoki, and Saori Yoshida. that rocking track that you guys just listened to, that was Pledge of Demon from the game Yakuza 0. It came out for the PS3 and PS4 in 2015, and it was composed by Yuri Fukuda, Chihiro Aoki, and Saori Yoshida.
Oh, man.
That was epic.
Wow, yeah.
That was super epic.
And very different from what we've heard from this series so far. The heavy guitars were a nice kind of break from like the funky, almost like we were saying, like 70s sounds and guitars, and then those like heavy electronic sounds, just like the synths and everything else that was going on there, definitely felt way more modern, which I think is really funny considering Yakuza 0 is a prequel, so we're going back in time in the series, but like forward in time in the music almost. It's really interesting.
I feel like I got a lot of inspiration from a lot of other games. The beginning reminded me a lot of Killer Instinct, like the newer Mick Gordon games.
Okay.
With that like da 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 da, and then like a little like
I hear that.
or like grindy kind of electronic stuff going on. And then as the track kind of moved on, it just got more and more epic, with a lot of really awesome electronic vibes that were kind of seeping throughout this entire thing. And then when the guitars came in, it started to feel a lot more like Final Battle-ish, or like cutscene oriented, before it kind of rolled back into the earlier parts of the song. But I gotta say, that part where those strings start coming in felt very like Metroid Prime to me for whatever reason. I don't know what it was, but there was just like a part in the game in this track that we just heard where it sounded like something that you'd hear in like a Metroid track, maybe when it got a little bit more like grindy, like the electronic grindiness, like in the middle of the track. Not the orchestral stuff. I misspoke. So.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is a good pick. I dig it.
Thank you.
So where does this play in the game?
This is the battle theme for this reoccurring boss in the game.
Okay.
I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. His name is Daisaku Kuze. If I remember correctly, he is like a high-ranking member of the Tojo clan, and I swear you probably fight this guy like 4, 5, 6 times throughout the story. I mean,
so he's a recurring bad guy.
Yeah.
But he's not a recurring bad guy. Sorry.
I mean, if you fight him, I'm sure he is a bad guy.
This is a prequel to the rest of the games, which is weird because we were just talking about Yakuza 4, which sort of takes place like in the past, right? In like the 80s or something like that? Or
No, this is in the 80s.
Oh, this is the one that takes place.
Yakuza 4 is in 2010. It seems like the games take place in the year that they're released.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
That's an interesting way to do things. I didn't realize that until I was actually looking at the timeline. And then I was like, Yakuza came out in 2005 and takes place in 2005. Yakuza 2 came out in 2006 and takes place in 2006, et cetera, et cetera. And so Yakuza 0 is, I think, the first, because 5 came out in 2012 and it takes place in 2012. And then 0 is the first one that doesn't take place in the year that it came out.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
I think they're neat little timestamps.
Yeah. So what's going on with this one? I know if Yakuza came out in 2005 and Kazuma was in jail for 10 years, he went to jail in 95. So this takes place in the 80s. What's the deal? Does this like lead up to his incarceration?
Not really. I want to say this takes place in, I think, 1988, 89. It's right at the tail end of the decade, and it kind of focuses on the early days of Kazuma Kiryu. It also has an intertwining plot with this other character in the game named Goro Majima.
I've heard of that name. I think he's one of the other playable characters in Project X Zone 2.
Oh.
He's the guy with the eye patch and like the leopard printed leather coat or whatever, right? He's kind of like a maniac. Is that that's the right guy? Okay, I could have sworn that name sounded familiar. Yeah, so he, at least in that game, because again, that's my only experience, he seems like he's kind of like an old foe turned friend in this game or in the Yakuza series. Is that pretty spot on, or is that totally way off?
Yeah, he's totally like a frenemy type guy.
Oh, okay, so I was kind of right.
Kiryu. Yeah, and then Yakuza 0, he's a lot more serious, and he's got a bit of a different design. I mean, he still has the eye patch, but he wears like a black suit, and he has kind of long hair with a ponytail.
Okay.
In the English version of the Yakuza games, he is voiced by Mark Hamill.
Oh, really? Oh, that's kind of cool. That almost makes me want to pick up the game just because of that. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, Majima also appears in Dead Souls, as well as the crossover Project X Zone 2, is voiced by Mark Hamill in English.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that dude's kind of a nutty guy.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, he definitely has a very eccentric personality in the Project X Zone 2 game, so I'm glad that they stayed faithful to the other characters. It feels like Kiryu just kind of doesn't want anything to do with him, you know? Leave me alone, or, I'll fight my own battles, that sort of thing. And this dude kind of comes in like, kamikaze with like chainsaws and all kinds of stuff, so seems like my kind of guy.
Pretty much.
All right, so Yuri Fukuda, the first composer on this list of composers, started off with Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz in 2006, and they're credited as the sound creator. And after they worked on the Yakuza series with the third and fourth entry, they then worked on Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, and after a couple more Yakuza games, which we'll get into in a bit, they worked on Binary Domain. They're credited on the sound production team for Yakuza 5, so maybe not the composer, but just on the sound team in general.
Yeah.
After Binary Domain and a couple other of the Yakuza games, they ended with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania in 2021. They also worked on Banana Blitz HD right before that, and the Fist of North Star Lost Paradise game in 2018, which I believe uses the Yakuza engine, so to speak. Yeah.
Neat. Chihiro Aoki has a very similar resume of the year, starting out with sound production in Yakuza 3, music composition in Yakuza 4, Yakuza Dead Souls, sound production team in Yakuza 5, Phantasy Star Online 2 in 2012, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, 2014, and then Yakuza 0, Yakuza 6, Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2, Shin Megami Tensei Liberation DX2 in 2018, they were music composer, and their last credit is Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD in 2019.
Very good. And then the final composer, Sayori Yoshida, started off with Yakuza Dead Souls in 2011 as an audio production assistant, and then continued working on the Yakuza series, similar to some of these other composers, also being on the sound production team for Yakuza 5. Phantasy Star Online 2, they did sound effects, and then they jumped back into the composer seat for Yakuza 6, The Song of Life in 2016. Their final game was the recent Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania game, which came out this year, or just a few months ago in 2021. That's pretty much it. So all these composers have very similar credits in a lot of ways. There's some games that are slightly different here and there, but for the most part, they stayed on with the Yakuza series, so they must really like working on it. Yeah.
All right, what do we got next, Mike?
All right, so I am going to play for you a track called Battle of Pride, and this came out on the PlayStation 3 in 2012, again from Yakuza 5, and this track again was composed by Mitsuharu Fukuyama. Hey, you're back. That was Yakuza 5, which came out in the PS3 in 2012. That track by the composer Mitsuharu Fukuyama was called Battle of Pride. That was dope. So good. My feet were going all over the dance pad like it was a DDR track.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is a very Eurobeat song,
Yeah.
which I enjoy Eurobeat. I mostly enjoy it in the realm of DDR and Paradise. So, like, as soon as this hit, I was just like, oh, man, up, down, up, down, down, and just like the arrows were scrolling up the screen.
In your brain?
In my brain.
Yeah. I was also a pretty big DDR fan. I haven't played any of the others, like, fairly recently. I think I stopped right around, like, DDR5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But definitely Eurobeat. I love Eurobeat. I mean, super high energy electronic music that has a huge emphasis on exciting melodies and just like, so good.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that genre, but I will definitely say that track was a lot of fun. And were you guys getting like some Mortal Kombat vibes from that?
A little bit, especially towards the beginning.
Yeah, some of the synths I think that they were using too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yakuza 5, we talked a little bit about briefly earlier, but as you could tell, I enjoyed both of those tracks, and they were both very different from each other. So it's very hard to pick from each. But this one, they, I guess, overhauled the graphics on it because franchise had been using the same graphics for a while in terms of the engine itself. But you could play as 5 different characters in 5 different settings all over Japan. So according to Sega's website, which is a lot more condensed than the Wikipedia pages on the plot, which basically gives you the entire plot broken down paragraph by paragraph
it's
by paragraph.
the whole game front to back.
Yeah. So this one, I'm just going to read from the website. Legendary dragon returns to the criminal underworld of Yakuza. Kazuma Kiryu, once known as the Dragon of Dojima, was living a quiet life as a taxi driver in Hakata after severing all his ties with the underworld. So this takes place, after he gets out of prison and everything. However, at the dawn of the bloody war between the Tojo clan and the Almi Alliance, Kazuma is forced to accept his inescapable fate and returns to a life filled with crime and violence to protect his loved ones. Yakuza 5 continues the epic story of Kazuma Kiryu and 4 other protagonists: Haruka Sawamura, Taiga Seijima, Tetsuo Shinada, and Shun Akiyama. The saga plays out across 5 major Japanese cities: Tokyo, Osaka, Hakata, Nagoya, and Sapporo. Yakuza 5 also features another drama, which is a series of extensive subplots that focuses on each protagonist. So they took what worked with the Yakuza 4. This is me stepping away from the website, but just to say that they took what worked in the Yakuza 4 and they added in, the mini games and some other cool stuff. I know that in the series they've thrown in some Sega-oriented materials too. Like you can play like Virtua Fighter 2 in one of the games, like a mini game. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like they have like actual arcade games that you can go and check out. I think there might be some gambling too that you can do in the Yakuza series. Like they try to, kind of spice it up with all these like side quests and mini games and stuff like that. Seems like it's a pretty in-depth series.
Yeah, they go pretty crazy with a lot of the side activities. And yeah, the all the Sega arcades stuff, I mean, that is like the highlight for me with the side stuff.
It's always interesting to see those types of things in games, like especially on something like this. I mean, it fits because, it's taking place in the real world, in Japan. So it makes sense that there would be arcade games, floating around with like stuff like Virtua Fighter 2 and whatnot. But the only one that comes to mind that I was like, what, was Donkey Kong 64, when they had the original Donkey Kong playable, like in the game. Like you could go find it and then like play it. And I was like, what? Why? That always kind of threw me for a loop with that sort of stuff. So it's always weird when they do it like that. But if it's like an actual arcade machine that you walk up to and you're playing a game that takes place in real life, it makes a lot more sense. And it flows and feels a lot more natural too. And it's, obviously a little nod to fellow Sega fans, like, hey, remember this game? Sort of thing. So that is that. We talked about the composer, so we're good on covering Mitsuharu Fukuyama. So I figure we'll move right into to your next pick.
Okie dokie. All right, so my next pick is actually going to be from one of the remakes. This is going to be from Yakuza Kiwami 2. Came out on the PS4 in 2017. The track is called Ruthless Octagon, and it's composed by Yuri Fukuda, Chihiro Aoki, and Sayori Yoshida. All right, you are back to this Yakuza-focused XVGM episode with guest star Alex Messenger. What you just heard was from Yakuza Kiwami 2. The track was Ruthless Octagon, composed by Yuri Fukuda, Chihiro Aoki, and Sayori Yoshida, and that came out in 2017 on the PlayStation 4.
I'm really glad you picked this track, and I mean this when I say this, I mean no disrespect. It's been so difficult to try to pick a track that is going to be a favorite track. You helped me by eliminating a track.
Jeez, okay.
So this is good. I really liked it, but
mixed signals here, Mike.
it was my least favorite of all the tracks that we've heard so far, but that's not a bad thing. You know, all the music in this has been phenomenal. It's been a tough thing to, in the back of my mind, try to pick something, but it's good stuff. What do you think about this one, Alex?
I 100% agree with you there. It is a good track. It is my least favorite on the show by default.
Yeah, I mean, you can not like a track.
All right, I'm taking my music and going home. I'll see you guys later. No, I can understand how this might not be some people's favorite track. I really enjoyed it just for the intensity. So I'm sure part of the problem that you and other people may have with it is it's a very busy track. Like, there is a lot going on, which makes it a little bit hard to kind of like follow or focus on any one particular thing. But the thing that made this track stand out to me on the soundtrack was the mix of like hard rock and, I don't want to say dubstep because they don't really get deep into the dubs and wubs, but there is like an EDM dubstep-ish influence going on here, and I just really liked the way that it came out. And then with the track being called Ruthless Octagon, I am not sure if there's MMA fighting in Yakuza Kiwami 2, but that's the first thing that came to mind, is just like I'll see you in the octagon, and then there's just like this really crazy MMA fight.
You're actually kind of on the right track with that.
Oh.
There is like an underground fight club type of deal where they do fight in a ring.
I know that the Kiwami games are not spin-offs, but remakes of the original. And I'm wondering, for one, if you know if there were any tweaks or changes made aside from graphical, and possibly if you like quality of life gameplay-wise.
I'm actually not sure about the differences between Yakuza 2 and Yakuza Kiwami 2. I want to say that the story and like the dialogue, I want to say it's pretty faithful to the original. I guess plot-wise with the game, it takes place about a year after the first Yakuza, and I think just like the main point was that there was a lot of tensions going on between the Tojo clan and this rival Yakuza organization called the Omi Alliance. And there is this guy who's part of that organization trying to stir up a lot of trouble between the two. And Kazuma Kiryu, I mean, he was trying to leave that life, and he pretty much gets dragged back in.
Apparently there's a new story scenario that they added to this one called the Majima Saga, and it allows you to play as Goro Majima, the character with the eye patch.
Okay.
And the so you can play as him.
Yeah, he's a recurring character throughout most of these games.
Yeah, and a lot of the games. He's pretty popular. I mean, a lot of people really like him, and he's got a pretty wacky, crazy personality. So, he kind of balances out Kazuma Kiryu. So,
yeah, Kiwami 2 came out like a couple years after Zero, and some of the plot stuff actually tries to tie that game into Yakuza Kiwami 2.
From what I'm reading about it as well, they kind of added like some additional story points to kind of like resolve some of the problematic portions of Yakuza 2's story that like didn't get answered, just like the hanging chads, if you will.
Okay.
Like leftover stuff that never got answered. So that's what it is. And then there's also some additional mini games that they added from like Yakuza 0, like Cabaret Club mini game, stuff like that. So yeah.
Nice. As far as the composers go, we spoke about Yuri Fukuda, Chihiro Aoki, and Seiri Yoshida earlier when we spoke about Yakuza 0. So this brings us into the final round robin. So, Alex, what is your last pick here?
Definitely going to throw you guys a bit of a curveball, both game-wise and song-wise. This is the sub-story battle theme from Yakuza Like a Dragon. It came out for the PS4 in 2020, and it was composed by Hidenori Shoji. That track that you guys just listened to, that was Sub-Story Battle Theme from Yakuza Like a Dragon. It came out for the PS4 in 2020, and it was composed by Hidenori Shoji.
Good stuff.
Oh, man.
That was wacky. That was definitely different. It almost was like an old school VGM track, you know, from like the chiptune era, kind of pipe through like new tech.
Yeah.
You know?
I got retro VGM mixed with, again, I don't want to call it dubstep because it's not really dubstep, but like EDM and a little bit of hard rock, but more EDM than anything else. And that was a lot of fun.
So why pick this one? Just because it sounded old school, or was there a more in-depth reason behind picking this one? Does it like reflect the game's vibe?
Pretty much all of that. I mean, I think it's a pretty amazing track. And I guess I should explain with Yakuza Like a Dragon, it goes for a totally different game genre. It moves away from the beat-em-up style to an actual JRPG.
Oh.
See, that makes sense. Because I'm getting like boss battle. I know this says battle theme.
Sub-story battle theme.
Yeah, but I'm getting like a Final Fantasy boss. You know, like this is one of those Final Fantasy boss type tracks that you would hear from like Final Fantasy 5 or 6 or whatever. Like the old school, you know, very like big, brash, big epic tracks that you would hear where there's just a lot going on audibly.
Yeah, this track, it definitely knows what it is and what it's trying to go for. And I think that's just the thing that I find like pretty amazing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see why you picked it. I mean, it's a fun track to listen to, but at the same time, it also like stands out on its own as a very unique piece of VGM that pays respect to the old school while bringing in something new. So I wish more VGM did this sort of thing. So.
Yeah, a mixture of like the chip tunes and the modern stuff.
Yeah, because like especially a lot of indie stuff nowadays is just like so desperate to sound like, you know, retro VGM, which is fine. Like, I love me some retro VGM, but it's refreshing to hear a game sound new and old at the same time using, you know, there was no other way that I could have put it personally other than retro piping through modern tech. So that's kind of the vibe that I got from it.
And it kind of stands out from the rest of the soundtrack, because I think a lot of the music in that game, it kind of goes for, I guess, what the kids these days call trap music.
Okay. That I'm not familiar with. I'm way too old. You're a little younger than us, Alex. But
I'm too old for this.
Real quick, something I just wanted to touch back on. Alex had mentioned that there was a change from like the real-time beat-em-up mechanics to more of like a turn-based JRPG system. Apparently, that was the result of an April Fool's joke back 2019 that was so well received that they retooled the combat, because this was going to be like a beat-em-up, and they did an April Fool's joke, and it was so well received that they were like, screw it, let's do that.
Yeah.
There's also a job system, apparently.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
That's cool.
It's like literally a job system.
But it's a 3D game, right? Like, it's not a 2D.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still like an open world game. It just, when you get into fights, it goes into a JRPG fight system, I guess.
That's cool.
Oh, man. This is
you
really
got
cool.
HP and they don't call it like magic points or anything, but you know, they have stuff similar to that. You get different armor. The job system, I mean, you literally go to a temp agency type deal and you get a job there, and then like that becomes your class.
Oh, so it's kind of like No More Heroes 2, where you go into like the little mini game type things, and they give you a job, and then you have to do that job as part of the like main gameplay mechanic. Like, oh, go in this field and pick up like a bunch of scorpions, or you know, all that type of stuff. Kind of neat.
Yeah. Haven't played it.
And I'm not even much of an RPG guy, and like this game, I think is absolutely fantastic. Like, I definitely recommend it.
Cool. Now, regarding the actual like main games in the franchise and the combat, how well does the combat flow? Like, do you think it flows pretty well, or do you think it's like stiff? Like, how does it feel?
I think kind of early on, like in the series, I wouldn't say it has like a stiffness, but I guess there is a little bit of a stiffness with a good flow, if that makes any sense to you.
Okay.
And I think it gets better and better as the series goes on.
Yeah, it sounds like they remodeled or retweaked the franchise to play slightly different in the later games. So that makes sense, trying to improve on what you already created. I'm wondering if the Kiwami games are slightly better controlled-wise,
Kiwami 1, like, I think it's good. I think it's even better in Kiwami 2.
All right, so we'll talk about the composer on the very last track because we'll be playing something else from this. But let's get into my final pick. This is from Yakuza 3, which came out on the PS3 in 2009. This track is called Clay Doll on the Cradle, and it's by Hideki Sakamoto, Hiroyoshi Kato, and Keisuke Ito. Welcome back to XVGM Radio, and you just heard my final pick from our Yakuza game special with Alex from a VGM Journey. The track we heard was from Yakuza 3, which came out on the PlayStation 3 in 2009, And this soundtrack was by Hideki Sakamoto, Hiroyoshi Kato, and Keisuke Ito, and the track itself was called Clay Doll on the Cradle. This one sounded very epic and very modern with the electronic instrumentation. It sounded sounded very serious. And I think the piano is really what did that for me. I mean, that main lead bass line, which is kind of like a techno electronic bass line, you know, it's just pretty standard. But that piano, when it comes in, that do kind of reminds me of, you know, going back to the days of like Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, you know, listening to Sticker Brush Symphony, you know, that sort of thing. Anytime you throw just a lone piano into a track, it kind of gives it this very emotional vibe. So I'm not sure when this takes place in the game, of course, but that is what I would guess, is that it's a very serious part where you're maybe running after somebody that is hurt or injured or something like that.
Yeah. This reminds me of some of the music from Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not like super electronic like some of that stuff is, but just the little bit of electronic that's in there combined with the guitars and then, like you said, the piano. I mean, I agree with everything you said. And then just as far as like what I had going on in my head when I was listening, I was being brought back to certain pieces of some FF7R tracks.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike was definitely on the right track. This track plays towards the end of the game. You are going through a hospital, and you're trying to make your way up to the roof, and I think this is going to be a little over the top, but like a lot of the people that you're fighting are CIA agents.
Okay.
So definitely get that very serious vibe. I do kind of dig the electronicness of that track. It definitely has a very modern sound to it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's, you know, complex but simple at the same time, which is a unique trait for a track to have. That's interesting that it takes place in a hospital, so I was kind of somewhat on par with, you know, the fact that it's towards the end of the game. So that makes sense. Speaking of the game, this game comes part of the Yakuza Remastered collection, which you can get on PS4. So that's probably the best way to play it. And the plot involves a quest to abandon their past and kind of step away from everything that they've been dealing with. So Kazuma Kiryu and his now adoptive daughter, Haruka Sawamura, leave Kamurocho and they go to the island of Okinawa to run an orphanage called the Morning Glory Orphanage. However, trouble brews involving the orphanage, and there's a power struggle where he's got to step in and try to rescue the orphanage and kind of like atone for, you know, a lot of the stuff that he'd done previously, you know, kind of like not so much righting the wrong, but like doing good now to kind of make up for the fact that he did so much bad previously, so to speak.
I think that's the one thing I actually do like about the character of Kazuma Kiryu is that I think on the surface, you know, he's kind of tough guy, looks like he's pretty mean and stuff, but, you know, down on the inside, like, yeah, he's done some bad stuff, but overall, like, he's a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I think that's really what they try. It's kind of like an anti-hero sort of thing.
Gangster with a heart of gold.
Exactly. So these composers for this game, Yakuza 3, we talked a little bit about them, just like briefly, like mentioning that they worked on other games, including the intro that we talked about where Alex picked that awesome track, Fly. So Hideki Sakamoto started off with a game called Juggernaut in 1998, and then later on did music for John Romero's Daikatana in 2000, the N64 and PC game. Later on, they jumped on to Samurai Western, which I believe was an Atlas game where they did sound production. They worked on a couple Bomberman games, Shining Force EXA in 2007, Castlevania Judgment, they were the music director for that game. And, you know, they worked on a bunch of stuff like Dragon Ball Z games, and then started working with Nintendo on Super Smash Brothers, which, I mean, who hasn't worked on Super Smash Brothers? So his final game, just to jump way forward, is Near Replicant version, I don't know, 1.22474. I'm not going to read the whole number. It's like a super long number or whatever. So he was the executive audio manager on that. Hiroyoshi Kato is our second composer on this one. A lot less credits. Yakuza 2 was the first game that they worked on, and they were credited under support. And then they worked on IQ Mania in 2006, the same year. They did a DDR game, actually 2 DDR games, both Supernova games. And then their last game was DDR Revolution X2 in 2009, where they did a track called Freeze. So Yakuza 3 was their final Yakuza game. And last but not least, Keisuke Ito started off with Shinobi-Do, Way of the Ninja in 2005. They kind of jumped around from working with different companies. You know, they were with Sega on this game, but then they went over and started working with the Pokemon team with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of the Sky in 2009. They did a couple other Pokemon games here and there, also worked on the Tukiden series with a couple games, and their latest game is the 2020 release of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. But before that, they were also a composer on the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night game, which came out in 2019. One of the many composers on that game.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into wrapping things up here. My last pick and the last pick of this episode is going to be from Yakuza Like a Dragon, the 2020 PS4 game. I've picked the track Overcoming the Dragon by Hidenori Shoji. right, welcome back. That was the last track of this episode, focused on Yakuza. That was Yakuza Like a Dragon, the 2020 PS4 release. The track was Overcoming the Dragon, composed by Hidenori Shoji.
I don't know why I didn't mention this before, but immediately, suddenly in my head, all I heard was like a dragon.
Yeah, of course
touched
you did.
for the very first time. Yeah. Anyways, oh my God, what a good track. I mean, I love the dun, and then the string arrangements too. The dun 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 dun, very sweeping, very pretty. And then one thing that I picked up on later towards the track, where it almost felt kind of like a Halloween, kind of like borderline Tubular Bells kind of thing, where you get these very quiet keyboards, these like synth keys that kind of come in, very kind of slow and plucky-ish. I was really digging this track. So good pick.
Thank you. No, I enjoyed this a lot as well. I mean, I've mentioned this before, so straight up the thing that really drew me into this was a lot of the dubstep influence, and it is much more prominent in this track. You definitely have like the very clear dubs and wubs. You have that R2-D2 scream noise that happens in there. It's not super common in dubstep, but it was popularized, I think, in the later years of dubstep. And anytime I hear it, it's not literally the R2-D2 scream, but that's all I can think of when I hear it. So it makes me laugh, and this track just really kind of got me moving and got me grooving. And then, as you were saying, the overdriven guitars, I thought were really cool, the way that they mixed all the stuff in. You just have all these dubs and wubs and guitars, and then it transitions to these strings, and there's a really flowing melody, and then it comes back to the really hard stuff. And I like a track that can do that just in general, but this track I think does it really well.
It's funny that you mentioned the dubs and wubs, because honestly, I didn't hear any of that.
Really?
I didn't. All I heard was that, I guess maybe I'm a little guilty of all I wanted to hear was that one part with the very Fear Factory driven, guitar lines and drums.
I knew that would be your favorite part. I just didn't know that it would eclipse everything else.
Yeah, it really stood out to me. And then that string arrangements that also really stood out to me. So it's this could have been a Fear Factory song, or at the very least, a Fear Factory remix, where they did those remix albums. So, yeah. What did you think about this one, Alex?
Totally agreeing with you guys on a lot of what you were saying, and I think I just wanted to add that it has all these elements that I think it could have easily not worked for this track, but somehow just everything just works.
Yeah, everything gels really well in this one.
And I mean, it's got elements of different genres of music that I really like, and it just all blends well into this nice, pretty, I don't want to say epic, but epic track.
It is very epic. I will agree with you there. So we already talked about Like a Dragon, so I don't think we need to dive too much into it, but tell me about the composer. He's kind of a big deal, right, Justin?
Yeah. Hidenori Shoji is technically the main music director. He is a composer in some of these games, but he's tied to almost every Yakuza game out there. He started doing composition and sound effects in Virtua Fighter 3 in 1996, and has been very prolific with Sega since then. Just picking out a couple things here. Fighting Vipers 2 in 1998, Slash Out in 2000, Planet Harriers in 2000. But he was a sound engineer and sound designer throughout most of the Super Monkey Ball games. And then we have Yakuza 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, the Kiwami. He's actually attached to all of the main Yakuza games. Maybe not so much the spin-offs, but I mean, the spin-offs are generally where your company is going to, take some chances and give some other people the ball to run with.
Right.
So his last credit is as a music composer in Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania in 2001. But yeah, no, big deal. Yakuza is basically his thing, his baby, and I guess Super Monkey Ball as well.
Very cool. So we have reached the end of this Yakuza exploration. And so we now come to the time in our show where we do the usual stuff, which is pick the favorite track that we really enjoyed of all these amazing songs. So we're going to let our guest go first. Alex, what's the first favorite that you have for this one?
That's a tough one. And I guess I'm going to have to stroke my own ego a little bit and pick my sub-story battle theme from Yakuza Like a Dragon.
That's a good pick.
It's a good pick, for sure. Justin?
I think I have to actually go with the same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Out of everything we had here, I mean, I enjoyed all of this music. I think a very close second would be maybe your Be the Star track.
I love that song.
That was really good. Funk Goes On was great. Like everything here I liked.
All good stuff.
But Alex, that sub-story battle theme was killer.
I think I'm going to go with Alex's intro, the Fly track. That was awesome.
That was pretty cool.
Really good. A lot of fun. And then I'm going to go second pick is your last song, the Overcoming the Dragon. Yeah. Great track. Yeah, just the Fear Factory guitars and mixed with those symphonic strings really hooked me. So good stuff. Well, Alex, we want to thank you so much for being on XVGM Radio. We know you're a listener, but you're also a patron, and you're the patron saint of VGM. So we thank you not only as XVGM Radio, but as members of this great community that we love working with and being a part of. So where can we find your show, and what are you working on that you'd like to plug? Please plug away.
You can find a VGM Journey on anchor.fm/VGM Journey. You could find the show on pretty much all the major podcatching services. You can follow the show on Twitter at VGM Journey. I think that's pretty much it for the social media stuff. I typically really don't do like specific topics, but I am planning the big holiday special in December.
Nice. That
I like to call the Secret Santa special, where I get a whole bunch of people involved, and I ask, whoever if they want to participate, and if they do, then I will assign them another listener, and they get to pick a special track for them, and I'll play it on the show.
Nice.
Oh,
I think
really
I
cool.
participated in that last year.
You did?
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for being on the show, Alex. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And everyone go check out a VGM Journey. On the links will be down below in the show notes. So we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Alex Messenger, Cam Worma, Chris Hart, Dan Lawton, Jordan and Anson Davis, Rage Cage, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Chris Myers, The Autistic Gamer 89, Bedroth, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Llama Adam, Marcus Stewart, Nathan Cooper, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/xvgmradio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you at the end of the show and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you've liked what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at facebook.com/groups/xvgmradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both of those sites is at XVGMRadio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links will be in the show notes.
All right, so Justin, in a month, we are coming back with a brand new episode. And this one's going to be kind of special. Tell everybody what we're going to be listening to.
So we're going to be listening to music from a particular game from the CDI. It's going to be Demo's Quest. I think you came across this a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
When we were doing...
Free picks.
Yeah.
But we featured the composer for it.
Yes.
In the episode. And while I was looking up the composer, I was like, wow, they have some really fantastic soundtracks, and they're still working to this day in the industry. I think they do either Horizon Zero Dawn or the God of War games or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Demo's Quest on the CDI is one of their earliest games, and so we're going to be diving deep into it. It's going to be kind of a blind listen because I legit only heard the title track and was blown away and was like, this would make a really good deep dive into a game that neither of us are familiar of, and just kind of focus on that and focus on the music and some of the elements of the story and stuff like that, the gameplay. We'll read up on it so we can tell you guys about it, but I think it'll be a really fun episode.
Yeah
We don't do this too often, so it'll be cool. And then that'll close out the year for XVGM Radio, and then of course we'll be back with Nico in the beginning of the year. We've already talked to him, and he's ready to bring the jams. So, so we'll see you in a month. And again, this is Mike
and Justin
signing off for XVGM Radio. It's like going to Taco Bell and drinking Baja Blast every single day, and then one day you show up and they play this track over the loudspeaker while you're ordering, and you're like, let me get a Baja Blast, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we're out. All we have left is Tangerine Sprite or something like that, or High C. And you're like,
you're
what?
really not making me believe that you don't hate this track, Mike. Every time you're like, I don't hate it. It's not bad, but
let me give you
garbage.
an analogy where it's terrible. Yeah, no,
It's okay.
I really do like the track. It's just not in a sea of greatness. It is a quarry.
The Super Monkey Ball games. He's been a sign designer. What?
A sound
designer is the word I meant to say, but I said signed designer.
Signed designer.
It's getting late. My brain's frying.
That's awesome. I'd say my rap interest goes until probably the early 2000s, and then I kind of tap out. I mean, maybe Little John here and there, but nothing else.
You don't pronounce the T. It's Lil John.
Oh, sorry. It's not Little John.
It's not Little Jonathan. It's Lil John.
You think his mom calls him Little Jonathan?
I doubt it.
That'd be funny. I bet she does. Little Jonathan, get over here and eat your Wheaties.
Jeez.
He's like, nah, Mom, I'm good.